Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for watching. I know it's been a little while, but as you all know, the last few months I have been planning to move house and that is happening this month now, so I'm so excited. So the end of my in and out YouTube hiatus is nearly in view, so I'm very excited. Because obviously I do want to get back to doing a video every week, and I can't wait to do that in my new bedroom, because my new bedroom is actually going to be the size of, this is my London bedroom at my mum and dad's house. For you OG viewers that remember this backdrop, this is my London bedroom, and my new bedroom in the new place in Brighton will be about the same size as this, but if this chimney breast wall was back. So yeah, I'm very excited to have a big room again and not a box room, so I really can't wait. But yes, I thought while I'm here in London, I'm taking a little weekend rest here in London this weekend. My mum and dad are on holiday, so I thought it would be a really nice opportunity to come to the house when it's empty and just get lots and lots of work done, film a video for you guys to keep YouTube ticking over and to reconnect with you guys as well. And I thought I would do a book review video because you guys have really been enjoying them and I get loads and loads of messages when I put one up. So I thought, I've read a few books this is over the last 8 weeks, so I have 4 books to show you guys that I've read over the last 8 weeks, and I'm a week and a half into my new book as well. Instead of doing a video for each book like I did with the Sally Rooney ones, I don't have as much to say about these, so I thought I would just do all 4 in one video. But I've got some really fantastic books here, so let's start talking about them. Okay, so 2 of these books are Thomas Hardy books, and if you guys don't already know, Thomas Hardy is my favourite author of all time. I absolutely adore his writing. He is, I believe, from like the 18th century, a writer from the 18th century, and he's predominantly known for his love stories and also writing about the hierarchy at the time and more village life. A lot of his books are set in like Devon and Cornwall. Anyway, on to the first book that I read, and this is 2 on a Tower. I hadn't actually heard of this book by Thomas Hardy previously to finding it, and I just came across it. Whenever I go into Waterstones, I always head straight for the Thomas Hardy section, even though he's obviously dead now and can't write any more books, but I go there like hoping there's a new one, but there obviously never is. But I hadn't heard of this one previously, but I went into Waterstones and saw this and thought, well, that looks up my street, because it has like stars all over the cover. And also it's a really short book. I think I got through this in a week. It was really easy to read. So the book is about Lady Constantine, who is a wealthy lady in this village. Her husband is away in, is it South America? It's been a while since I've read this now. I want to say South America, but it might be Africa, I can't remember. He's away, and she is riding on a horse and trap through her land, and she comes across this clock tower, or like this viewing tower, that she knows that she owns, but she like never ever takes advantage of having. So one day she goes there and she tells the horse and trap to stop, and she's like, right, I'm gonna go explore. She goes up the tower and she finds a man at the top, a young man. I think he's about 21 in the book. She finds him at the top, and he has created a telescope to stargaze, and they basically have this sort of love affair. And then, without spoiling the story too much, lots of things happen with her husband, and the book kind of revolves around these two becoming close while learning about stars together, and it's just a really lovely concept. I'm a sucker for something like that. So I really enjoyed this book, and I highly recommend it for anybody who hasn't read Thomas Hardy before. This is a really good one to start on because it's very simple. It's still in prose and it is still in Old English, so you do have to concentrate while reading it. I personally can read books in Old English much better than books in like common English. I don't know what that is. I I just have this like weird connection to that language. I don't know what it is. Anyway, I absolutely adore the way Thomas Hardy writes. I think I've spoken about him before. My favourite book of all time is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy, which is an incredibly sad book, but it's very close to my heart for many personal reasons. And the way he writes is so descriptive, and he talks a lot in, not riddles, but you don't always know exactly what's going on, and he's telling you in like a description of nature. But he does that less in this book, which is why I would recommend this as a beginner's Thomas Hardy book, because it's very quick and easy to get through. It's a really simple story, but it does have lots of twists and turns in it. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. I would really highly recommend it if you haven't read a Thomas Hardy book before. This one is a lot easier to read than some of his more complex books, such as Tess of the D'Urbervilles, or the one I'm about to show you next. So next up is Far From the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I had been meaning to read this book for years because it is an absolute Thomas Hardy classic. It's probably it probably is his most famous book. I think this and Tess of the D'Urbervilles are his two most famous, and The Mayor of Casterbridge. This is my mum's favourite book of all time, and I can see why, because I adore this book. Like, this is actually probably my second most loved book on the planet. So Thomas Hardy has taken the number 1 and 2 spot now. I adore this book so much, I can't even tell you. If you like reading books that are quite feminist led as well, you may enjoy this, which is something that Thomas Hardy actually used to be really slated for at the time his books were coming out. He has in most of his books the lead character is female, which never went down well back in the 18th century, and he gives the women a lot of rights in their books and talks about women's struggles at the time, and again talking about hierarchy and stuff. That is a big concept in this book. It basically covers the story of Bathsheba. She's the main character, and she is a very strong, independent woman. She takes over I think it's her uncle's farm, and there is another farmer called Gabriel who works on the field next to her, who falls madly in love with her. And then there's a soldier who falls in love with her, and an elder man who lives down the road who falls in love with her, and she is basically like, I don't want any of you. But it's such a fantastic book. It's very pro women's rights for the time. Obviously it doesn't talk about like what life is like now because it was written so long ago, but Thomas Hardy got a lot of like backlash for writing about women in such a way that they had a choice, and like marrying for money and marrying into wealthier families and marrying for status. It talks about all of this in the book and how Bathsheba doesn't want to do any of that. It's so interesting. It's such an insight to the times, and I just can't even tell you how much I adore it. Like, I don't want to spoil it. Like, that's the premises of the book. I really recommend you read this book. Again, it's not particularly that long. Like, you can get through this. Like, this took me 2 weeks. I mean, I could not put this down, but I don't always get a lot of time to read. So yeah, I think this took me a week and a half, 2 weeks. It is just honestly incredible. I mean, I'm biased because I just love how Thomas Hardy writes, but it's just stunning. It's really stunning, and I completely understand why this is my mum's favourite book of all time, because it is just beautiful. It's such a brilliant book, and any girls watching who want to read a slightly feminist book from a different time than now, I would highly recommend this. It is slightly harder to read as it is in prose a lot, but it's nowhere near on the level of Tess of the D'Urbervilles. That one's a lot harder to read because he writes a lot in naturalist metaphors, I think they're called. Anyway, yeah, highly recommend it. It's stunning. I really can't like tell I can't get across how much this book meant to me when I was reading it. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Please go read it. Okay, next up is another classic. I feel like I was trying to get through the classics over the last 6 weeks it took me to read these 3. The next one is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Obviously a classic book. This is such a famous book, and rightly so, because it is phenomenal. It's just so brilliant, and I'm sure so many of you have seen the film with Leonardo DiCaprio, and oh my god, how have I just forgotten her name? I bloody love her. Who plays Daisy? Literally have the DVD here. Carey Mulligan! I knew it began with a C. Carey Mulligan. She's in the film with Leonardo DiCaprio for this. The book really does not stray too far from the film. The film is directed by Baz Luhrmann, and he's quite famous for adapting books very accurately, and I would completely agree with that. Again, a short one, like you can get through this pretty quickly. I really highly recommend it. It was the first F. Scott Fitzgerald book that I read. Really enjoyed the way it's written. It's very, I can see why it's turned into a film. It's very, very easy to adapt. It's almost written film-like, but not as a script. It's very, very descriptive, which I like, because it paints a clear picture in your head of what's going on. It's just such a fantastic book. Honestly, like the concepts and it's complex. It has fantastic character development. Just all the characters coming together. There's basically a group of like 7 main characters in this. It's so fantastic and so beautifully written in a sort of monologue form. It's just brilliant. Like, I'm sure you know the story. So the story is that Jay Gatsby lives in this massive mansion. He's made all of this money. Nobody really knows how he's done it. And next to him lives this guy called, mate, my memory. Was it Nicky? Is it Nicky? What's his name? Yeah, it's Nicky. It's Nick Carraway. I'm so sorry. I'm an idiot. Just tell you how much I love the story, and then I can't even remember the main character's name. That's because I'm stupid. So the main character is Nick, and he becomes Gatsby's neighbour. And the reason why he's moved there is because his cousin Daisy, who is incredibly rich, is married to a man called Tom, and they have a friend called Miss Baker, who all live in this massive mansion. And Nick's moved here to become a stockbroker in New York City. It's set just outside of New York in West Egg and Long Island, and he's moved there to be closer to his cousin and to visit her. Then he realises that his neighbour is Gatsby, and Gatsby throws these parties every single weekend. And you find out that Gatsby has a history with Daisy, but Daisy doesn't know that he lives just across from her. It's all very he said, she said, what happened then happens now, blah, blah, blah. It's really, really fantastic. If you've watched the movie, then you already know the story. I'm sure most of you have seen it. And it's very, very accurate to the book. I just love how it's written. It's so fantastic. I really can't recommend it enough again. I feel like I've read some really good books lately. Like, these were fantastic books. I really enjoyed reading them. And I would highly recommend The Great Gatsby. Okay, so that's the classics done. And now on to a modern book. I read, what is it called? Oh my God. You can tell I haven't done YouTube in a while because I just literally don't know what I'm doing anymore. In at the Deep End by Kate Davies. Now this was brought to my attention, I believe, in like Grazia magazine or Red magazine. I always read the book sections, the book recommendations in all magazines. Yes, this was brought to my attention. It's about a woman who's like just been having casual sex with men, and then she's just never satisfied. Problem we've all had. And she's just never satisfied, and she just kind of knows deep down that really she's attracted to women and that she's not being honest with herself about that. And it just talks about her journey about coming to realise that she's a lesbian and her sexual ventures with becoming a lesbian. It's really, really interesting. There's a lot of themes throughout. Obviously, it talks a lot about like the LGBTQ plus community, which is fantastic. But there's a lot of underlining concepts throughout the book, such as emotional abuse and emotional manipulation, which was very interesting to read, because sometimes I was reading it like, this seems familiar. And she gets into like this relationship with this woman who she falls incredibly in love with, and feels it's like the be all and end all. It's her first lesbian relationship, so she obviously wants it to go really well. She's come out to her family and all of her friends, who kind of guessed that she was a lesbian anyway. And yeah, it's really interesting, but there are lots of themes of like emotional manipulation throughout, so if you feel that you'll find that triggering, then just be careful reading it. There's nothing graphic. There is a couple of role play scenes that are a little bit sadistic, I would say, I guess. But if you feel that you could read through those, then you'll be fine. I didn't find it like triggering at all, such as the Sally Rooney books could be. But this was just really, really fantastic and such a brilliant read. It's very, very funny as well. It's quite sartorial. Sartorial? Is that a word? What am I trying to say? I've not like got a brain today. I don't know what's wrong with me. That sort of like sarcastic humour running through. But yeah, really, really enjoyed this. It's quite a big book, but it's also got fairly large text, so I got through this pretty quickly. I'd say this took me 2.5 weeks, maybe. I can't quite remember, but it is very good. It's written pretty plainly. Like, I think this is the author's first novel. I believe this is her debut novel. I might be wrong, but it's written pretty plainly. There's no prose or like anything conceptual about the actual writing. It's written as most people would write a book, if that makes sense. Not to put the writing down, but that's just how it is. So very, very easy to read is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, really, really interesting. A great light on gay relationships. It was lovely to read about gay relationships, because it's not something that you get to read about very often. There was a few bits in it where I was like, this is a little bit cliche. Like, I mean, maybe I'm not one to talk. The author herself is gay as well, so maybe those things really do happen, but sometimes I was a bit like, I feel like that was a bit stereotypical, but then maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. So that's the only thing I could pick up on it, but otherwise a really, really funny book and a really interesting book if you if you want to read a more modern book, a book that's been released quite recently. Okay guys, so that's it for the books that I've read over the last 8 weeks. I'm just going to quickly tell you about the book that I'm reading at the moment. Obviously I'm not going to do a review on this right now. I'll do one in the next book video. But just to let you know, I'm reading The Circle by Dave Eggers. Really enjoying it so far. Takes a little while to get into, but once you do get into it, it's very, very interesting. So I will give you a proper review in the next video, but that's what I'm reading at the moment. This is a bit of a bigger book, and it does have quite small text as well. Don't know if you can see, so it's a bit heftier, but I'm getting my teeth into that. So thank you so much for watching, guys. It's been so good to be in front of a camera again and talking to you all. I've really enjoyed filming this. So I will do another book video in probably another 6 to 8 weeks, once I've got through at least 4 books to talk about, I'd say. But yes, the one that I've got to read after The Circle is called The Flat Share. Recently released. It's got really, really good reviews. I think it's about a boy and a girl who live together, who start off as strangers, and like their journey of living together. Sounded a bit more modern. I'm trying to read some more modern books, as you might be able to tell now, because I read a lot of classics. So yes, that's where I am with books at the moment. So do read The Circle along with me, because if you think you can finish it by the next video, then it'd be really, really interesting for you guys to leave in the comments what you thought about it. And likewise, if you've read any of the 4 books that I talked about today, please leave your comments in the comment section below. I literally love reading about what people thought of books that I've read. I find it super, super interesting. And please leave your recommendations for any books that I should be reading in the future. I've got quite a lot on my list. I think I've got about 21 books on my list that I want to read, old and new. So do leave me more recommendations though, because I can never have enough. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to watch more videos from me. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. And don't forget to go on my blog, rayofstyle.co.uk, to see all of my most recent blog posts. I love you all so much, and I will see you soon. Bye.